I'm Jacqueline Harris. I'm a writer, performer and academic, currently researching how we share folk tales and supernatural stories. I've always been fascinated by the spaces where reality meets imagination and where place, people and story come together. What are fairies? There are 1,000 answers to that question, but here's one from the 1600s with a surprisingly modern feel. Robert Kirk described fairies as having light changeable bodies, somewhat of the nature of a condensed cloud, and best seen at twilight. This is Morecambe Bay. Roger was a fisherman here in Morecambe when it was a tiny village called Poulton. He'd been out fishing all day in the bay. The sun had set and he turned his boat for home when he heard the sound of bells. But the oddest thing was, the sound was coming from beneath his boat. He leant over, looked down carefully, but couldn't see anything. When he stood back up, everything had changed. His little boat was gliding alongside a shoreline that he didn't recognise. 30 tiny green figures poured out from the trees, ran across the beach, 2 of them straight through to the shallows. One got hold of each of Roger's arms, yanked him out of his boat, across the rocks and into the trees. But soon it opened out into a great underground cavern lit by 100 fire torches and full of music and light and dancing. There were hundreds of these creatures whirling around. And he danced until he was exhausted, until his feet ached and his eyes were closing. But he danced on until he collapsed with exhaustion and fell asleep. When he woke up, he was sitting on a grassy bank, and opposite him was a woman, and he knew exactly who she was. She was the queen of the fairies. And she might just as well have thrown a spider's web over him, because in that moment he was lost. He'd forgotten everything, even his wife, his children. He ran across the clearing, threw himself at her feet and kissed them. And there he was, in his little blue boat, stranded on a sandbank in Morecambe Bay. Whatever fairies are or are not, they're an integral part of our storied landscape. They reappear across time and countries in different guises. And the stories we tell about them say far more about ourselves than they do about fairies, who remain mysterious and elusive and constantly changing as we change our ideas about them.